video games, the forbidden fruit. As the child of granola academic parents, I was never allowed to be a gamer. My childhood experience playing any sort of video game was with obscure hand-me-down game cards on a hand-me-down DS, probably 5 years too late for it to be cool. Actually, I think the first time I experienced class consciousness was when everyone updated to the 3DS. My mom even went so far as to lie to me and tell me that our computer didn't support webkins. It was literally a website. Thus, I was never able to understand the specific brand of skills and tact, the narrative or strategic understanding that came with the genre. The analysis and playthrough work we have been doing this semester in narrative and technology has truly opened me up to a new world through which to understand interaction, medium, and story. One game I did play has consistently been itching the back of my mind as we explore the concepts of this class, from those of Henry Jenkins to Murray Lore Ryan. It has long been buried in the recesses of my mind, but for this project, I have uncovered it. Here is that story, and how I found meaning from it. Circa 2010, I began to have the luxury of computer time. Even more exciting was playing my first video games on the internet. The platforms of choice? Girls Go games and cool math games, iconic fixtures of the Gen Z cultural memory. Because games clearly were not a significant part of my upbringing, I was surprised at the vivid image I still had in my mind of this one game. Found on Girls Go games, I knew this game was about horses, took place in a barn, involved turning horseshoes a certain way to solve riddles or unlock things, was incredibly confusing, and somehow captured perfectly Henry Jenkins' concepts of emergent narrative, even on such a rudimentary platform. And so, I set off to find it. First stop, Internet Archive's Wayback Machine. No luck. Wireless Pitnet did me dirty. I then tried every Google search, every keyword, surely tainting my search history and confusing my algorithm. Horse, game, Girls Go games. Girls Go games, horse, complicated game, question mark? Game where you're in a barn. Maybe game when you're in a barn 2000s. 2000s web game find way out of barn, question mark? I reviewed every obscure Reddit post and scrolled forever on images, hoping to spark a memory. It was then that I saw it. That image, that horse, shook me back to my desktop computer running Windows 6. I had found it. Charger escape. Okay, I'm back from my playthrough of Charger Escape, circa 2008. It took me 15 minutes to play, and I had to cheat. This site said multiple times that it was easy. Maybe I just suck at video games, but that was much harder than I expected, but also I do think it was clever. I don't remember all this. Oh, I was expecting this to be like a step-by-step playthrough, but okay, it basically just says it's a point and click. Alright, here we go. So, though most of the title page links were broken, the game itself was surprisingly fully functional. The plot of Charger Escape is simple, but the game doesn't provide much explanation. As put in the blurb, Charger Escape is a fun puzzle game involving horses. Your champion thoroughbred horse is trapped, and you must try and help it escape so that you can race again and bring it home safely. The landscape of the game is very much two-dimensional, literally. The player's job is to navigate through the different rooms of the barn and interact with different elements of the environment to find hints and solve puzzles to free the horse. The interaction pretty much caps out at lateral movements through a few rooms, with a few notable exceptions, such as entering the farrier room to manipulate the horseshoes. Charger Escape is inherently a point-and-click. However, though this is obviously a game for kids, it would be a disservice to ignore the thoughtfulness of this game, programmed by Mateusz Skutnik and written by and illustrated by Barbara Jarosik. The subversive complexity of the game can most clearly be identified using the framework found in Murray Lore Ryan's Interactive Onion. She would likely categorize it not as Category 1, nor Category 2, but Category 3, interactivity creating variations in a predefined story. Users can participate on an ontological and ergodic level, forging their own ways through the story, in this case, liberating the horse, and discovering a surprisingly magical world that lies at the end. You can see that throughout the barn there are dozens of tiny opportunities for depth. Most elements are interactive, from prompting the horse to wink or cleaning up the barn, and these add to the fun of discovery. The reason I've been so intent on finding this game is precisely because of how accurately it encompasses many of the higher level concepts in ludology and narratology we have been studying this semester. While a lot of the earlier hints or tasks involve simply gathering items without a lot of strategy, you can see here I am gathering all the items pretty quickly. It quickly escalates. The initial simplicity of the game is almost a distraction from the more thought-provoking tasks. In Game Design as Narrative Architecture, Henry Jenkins argues for a marriage, a happy compromise between ludology and narratology, in order to understand stories through games. I find his claim that games are less of stories and more of systematic, spatially significant places quite apt. Here, designers are more like narrative architects, he says. Yes, in Charger Escape, the story taking place truly is less of a temporal structure and is more so a body of information that one can explore. Information is, in a way, static and redundant, to account for people like me who cannot be guaranteed to find their story on their own, and offers the opportunity for players to traverse it at their own pace, which leads to greater satisfaction. Jenkins translates urban designer Keith Lynch's philosophy to game design, saying that each space should be endowed with poetic and symbolic potential. The designers of Charger Escape have used artifacts throughout the game space to create a meaningful game whose space I remembered for more than a decade. Let's take an example. In the last half of the game, the puzzles get significantly more difficult. This is when I had to cheat, to be honest. I was trying to operate this kiln-like thing, and was really stuck trying to follow the instructions. It comes into play again later on, and I really had no idea what was going on.
Oh. No.
This online forum, which remarkably still exists, made me realize that I had completely missed this tiny little panel hidden on the machine, which basically explains the rest of the game. I was discovering an embedded narrative. I wanted to take some time to talk about the game beyond my playthrough of the plot. Charger Escape exists in a very interesting time of the internet, a time that is deeply nostalgic to me and my generation. Firstly, I think these arguments that Jenkins made, where games aren't only respected based on the story they are trying to tell, works well when trying to understand games for smaller kids. Ultimately, in order to get any sort of learning out of those experiences, it must be about the process, not about the end result. Royce Kimmons at UT Austin writes, "Not all play, however, needs to be in the context of a game. That is, play can effectively exist without structurally imposed rules of engagement and pre-established outcomes, and not all motivating aspects of successful gameplay need to be behaviorist in nature." He says that designing games for children with education in mind shouldn't just be all about capitalizing on behavioral psychology, and should be about letting kids just explore a, quote, less confined theoretical space from which to construct knowledge than would a strict game system of action-reward correlations. It is way more rewarding to discover these hints when you're unintentionally working towards them than when you are told this is your explicit goal. And yeah, these games were super impactful for me and did inform how I think about my life, from the music I study with, to art styles that I like, to how I make my food and beverage jobs more fun by imagining I'm in Papa's Cupcakeria. This platform and genre of internet games is extremely nostalgic and meaningful. I want to argue that Jenkins' concept of evocative spaces in narrative architecture and games can apply to nostalgia and even permeate platform or mode. In a way, my generation has lived through an entire life cycle of games. Now Nintendo and other developers are capitalizing on these feelings with an entirely new category of games labeled nostalgia games, which tap into its audience's wider memories and emotional associations. Even the now extinct genre of Flash games has become a point of study. In Anastasia Salter and John Murray's Flash, Building the Interactive Web, they state that they believe it's time for humanists to seriously consider the lowest level of computing systems to understand their relationship to culture and creativity, particularly the creator and consumer communities Flash fostered. I think that, just as I revisited Charger Escape after it held such a distinct presence in my memory, as a culture we will begin to see a resurgence in similar games that evoke our memories of playing flash games and such as kids on our computers, and realize that these games weren't just after-school time killers, they had value. I feel grateful that I have such good memories of such solid, wholesome games from my childhood, and I feel grateful that people take the time to design them for our consumption. I'm also glad to have had this time to find Charger Escape and revisit it. It's a pretty incredible game that deserves a lot of credit. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you on the internet. Bye!